Imagine a man born in the very heart of a monarchy, whose life from birth was predetermined by high expectations and boundless duties. A man who wore a uniform, fought for his country and earned recognition, yet experienced personal suffering that made him the most ordinary of men. In 1920, Prince Albert, the second son of King George III, received the title of Duke of York, a well-deserved recognition after his service in the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force during World War I. It seemed his future, though not on the throne, would be calm and measured, filled with ceremonial duties and a life in the shadow of his elder brother Edward. However, behind this facade of royal stability lay a personal struggle known to only a few. Prince Albert suffered from a severe stutter, so severe that it significantly complicated his life. Ordinary conversations were a great challenge for him. Public speaking, an integral part of any royal family member's life, was a true ordeal for him, a source of constant fear and embarrassment. This stutter was not just a speech defect, it was a barrier separating him from the world, forcing him to avoid not only official events, but even simple family gatherings where casual conversation was required. How could a man with such a severe affliction not only fulfill his duties, but ultimately ascend to the throne and become one of the most beloved and respected monarchs in British history? His life seemed destined to follow a predictable course: service, marriage, children, and ceremonial functions. His elder brother Edward, the Prince of Wales, was the heir to the throne, bright, charismatic, and popular, despite his often eccentric nature. Albert was the other brother on whom the weight of the future crown did not rest. This could have been a blessing for a man suffering from such a debilitating condition. He could have enjoyed a relatively quiet life, dedicating himself to his family and a limited circle of duties that did not require constant attention. However, fate, as it often does, had its own plans. Albert's path to relative obscurity was interrupted in an unpredictable way. It began with his marriage. In 1923, he married Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, a woman who became his greatest support and pillar throughout his life. She saw not an embarrassed and stuttering prince, but a man strong in spirit who fought his demons. Her unwavering faith in him was the first step on the path to transformation. But despite personal happiness, the problem of stuttering did not disappear. Imagine a press conference or an official reception where every word is a struggle, where pauses stretch endlessly, causing nervousness in the speaker and awkwardness in the listeners. Albert was acutely aware of how his speech was perceived by others, and this only increased his insecurity. He tried many treatments, doctors, and therapists, but nothing brought lasting results. Desperation grew. His wife Elizabeth, seeing her husband's suffering, knew that a solution had to be found. She actively sought those who could help, and this persistence led them to an unusual man, Lionel Logue, an Australian speech therapist with unconventional methods. The meeting with Logue was a turning point. Logue was not a court physician. He was a practitioner who approached speech problems from an unorthodox but effective perspective. He did not just try to fix the stutter, he sought to understand its roots, working not only on articulation, but also on the psychological barriers that fed this affliction. Their collaboration began in the mid-1920s and was not easy. Albert was skeptical, Logue was persistent. The sessions were grueling, requiring discipline and candor. Logue used breathing exercises, relaxation techniques, and, most importantly, created an atmosphere of trust in which the prince could feel comfortable practicing. This was not passive therapy, but active work between patient and therapist. Gradually, step by step, the first results appeared. Albert's speech became less interrupted. His confidence began to grow. He still stuttered, but now he had tools and techniques to control himself, to not succumb to panic at every difficulty. This was not an instant cure, but a long and persistent process that required enormous willpower and perseverance from both the prince and his therapist. And this work in himself took place against the backdrop of increasingly turbulent times, both in the prince's personal life and on the world stage. The growing tension in Europe, the echo of World War I resonating in every capital, and the approach of a new catastrophe, all this cast a shadow over the life of the royal family. But even in peacetime, it seemed that Albert's quiet life was not meant to be. His elder brother, Prince Edward, the heir to the throne, increasingly showed his unwillingness to take on the role of monarch. His personal life, tangled relationships, and clear rejection of royal duties became a constant source of headaches for his father, King George V, and the government. King George, a man of the old school with a deep sense of duty, became increasingly disappointed in his elder son. He openly expressed concerns about the future of the monarchy under his leadership. And more often, his gaze turned to Albert, despite his speech problems. Albert, unlike Edward, demonstrated responsibility, dedication to duty, and stability in his personal life. He was reliable, even if not charismatic. This was a slow but inexorable process. The more Edward distanced himself from the ideal heir, the closer Albert came to the center of attention, even with his stutter. His wife Elizabeth, with her unparalleled charm and strength of character, also played a key role, representing the ideal candidate for a future queen. The public and the political establishment increasingly saw in Albert and Elizabeth hope for a stable future for the monarchy in troubled times. In 1936, King George IV passed away. Edward VI ascended to the throne. It seemed that Albert's fate was finally sealed. He would remain the Duke of York, fulfilling his duties in the shadow of his brother, the monarch. But Edward's reign was short-lived. His intention to marry Wallis Simpson, a twice-divorced American, caused a constitutional crisis. The British government, the Church of England, and most of the dominions strongly opposed this marriage, considering it unacceptable for a monarch. Edward faced a choice: give up Simpson and remain king, or abdicate the throne to marry the woman he loved. After much deliberation, just a few months into his reign, Edward V decided to abdicate. This event was a shock to the entire nation, and especially to Albert. In an instant, his life, seemingly planned and predictable, was turned upside down. He, a man who had always avoided public speaking because of his stutter, a man who had prepared to spend his life in his brother's shadow, found himself next in line for the throne. The weight that fell upon his shoulders was enormous. The world stood on the brink of a new war, and the British Empire needed a strong and confident hand at the helm. How could a man who struggled to say his own name in front of strangers become a symbol of national resilience and determination? It was an incredible test, a challenge to his entire life. But it was at this moment that all the work he had done with Lionel Logue became crucial. Years of exercises, struggles with internal barriers, attempts to take control of his voice, all this had prepared him, unknowingly, for this moment. He was not a perfect orator, but he had learned to cope. He had learned to overcome. In December 1936, after Edward VI's abdication, Albert, the Duke of York, became King George VI. The world watched the new monarch, knowing of his affliction, but not of the inner strength that had brought him to this moment. Now he had to not only rule, but speak. Speak to the nation, to the world in the darkest time in history. His speech had to become the voice of Britain, and he spoke. Perhaps the most famous was his speech in September 1939, when Britain declared war on Nazi Germany. At this historic, fateful moment, King George V addressed his nation on the radio. Millions of people gathered around their receivers in their homes, waiting for the words of their leader. And the king spoke. He spoke of duty, of honor, of fighting for a just cause. The stutter was evident at times. The words came with difficulty, but every sentence spoken was filled with determination and courage. This was not the speech of a virtuoso orator. This was the speech of a man who had overcome his fears to become the voice of his people in their darkest hour. And it resonated. It instilled confidence, united the nation, setting an example of resilience. King George II, the Duke of York, who once avoided public speaking, became a symbol of British resistance and determination. His reign during World War II was a period of unprecedented trials. He and Queen Elizabeth remained in London during the bombings, sharing the hardships of war with their people. Their courage and dedication to duty strengthened the bond between the monarchy and the British people. King George VI, whom no one expected to see on the throne, turned out to be the very monarch Britain needed in troubled times. The story of George VI is not just a story about stuttering and overcoming it. It is a story of an unexpected path to greatness, of accepting fate, of how inner strength and the support of loved ones can help overcome the most serious barriers. It is a story of duty, service, and dedication to principles even in the most difficult circumstances. Prince Albert, the quiet second son who dreamed of a quiet life, became King George VI, a symbol of resilience and courage in the darkest period of the 20th century. His life, which began with a struggle against inner demons, ended in a triumph of spirit over weakness. And this, perhaps, is the most inspiring legacy of the Duke of York, who became king.